Welcome back to the channel, boys. Fabloon's coming at your neck with the best stasis build I have ever created. Boys, this build has made me become addicted to stasis again. Now, I've been trying out some of these other subclasses because a lot of them did get a couple of buffs, got a couple of changes in how some things worked, a lot of variable cooldowns added. Grenades have really short cooldowns and some grenades have really long cooldowns. But I did notice that Cryosthesia actually got reworked. And once I saw that, I knew I had to create a build with it. I already loved the sidearm as it was, and now they got reworked. I had to try it out, and boys, let me tell you, it is fantastic. If you like the sidearm, if you like stasis, if you like mantle, if you like warlock, boys, we got it all. So let's go ahead and hop right in. Okay, so for this build, obviously we're going to be utilizing Shadebinder. We're going to use our cold snap grenades, mainly because they freeze instantly, and that's what I'm trying to do so I can create my stasis shards. I did try it out with the dust field grenades, but I didn't really notice the same amount of impact. Although with 100 discipline and dust field grenades, you can get them back like every 26 seconds. That's actually ridiculous. But I want to freeze instantly, so that's why we're going cold snap grenades. As for my aspects, we're using the glacial harvest, so whenever I do freeze any enemy, it could be with my abilities, my super, or with Cryosthesia, I can create stasis shards, as well as an ice flare bolt, so I can keep chain freezing enemies and create more stasis shards. As for my fragments, we're utilizing Whisper of Conduction, so the stasis shard is now tracked to me. We're also using Whisper of Refraction, so whenever I do defeat these frozen targets, I get my rift back, or get rift energy back. We're also using Whisper of Fissure, so stasis just does more damage, like the shatter does more damage and it has a bigger range. And then we're also using Whisper of Bonds. Now I would say that this is probably the most important fragment for this build because defeating frozen targets grants you super energy, and we're going to get so much super energy because we're going to be freezing so many different targets. So this is really important. If you want to use this build, you have to have Whisper of Bonds. Now as for my loadout, like I did say earlier in the video, we're utilizing Cryosthesia 77k. Now when this gun first came out, it was kind of like a meme. A lot of people didn't use it, although I still loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I got the catalyst immediately and I absolutely love this thing, so I didn't really think it needed a rework. You just kind of needed to build around it. But after the primary ammo changes, now you have infinite ammo, and the fact that this just got a rework, it made it so much better. So let's go ahead and break down what it did. So before, when you got a kill, you proc this perk called LN2 burst. So the way it worked before is you got a kill and then you would hold down the fire button and it would shoot a burst of stasis. Or it wasn't even a burst back then. I think it was just like if you hit it, it would freeze immediately. It wasn't like a big burst like it is now. But the way it works now is you get a kill, you then see LN2 burst activated or ready. You hold your reload button, it's going to swap the firing mode, and you shoot a blast of stasis. It does have a certain amount of range, it's not like infinite, but it's pretty far, and it's a big radius, so you can actually freeze a big group of enemies with this kill. And then what the catalyst does is shattering a frozen target refills his weapons magazine from reserves. So you don't even have to get a shatter kill from the gun itself. You can freeze an enemy, run to melee them, it's going to refill the magazine. You can use the gun itself. You can use your super. You can use a different one, freeze something, and then use a different weapon. It's going to refill the magazine, and that's why I absolutely love this gun, because if you play it correctly, you don't have to reload ever. And then you can keep freezing enemies as long as you're getting kills. You freeze them, then you swap back to the firing mode, and then you just keep shooting them with the gun. It's just an absolutely beast of a sidearm. If you like stasis and you like sidearms and you just like freezing absolutely everything, boom, this is the weapon for you. You could also use Agger Scepter, but this is a primary weapon and Agger Scepter is a special weapon. So I went with this because it's just fantastic. Now, as for the rest of my loadout, you can honestly use whatever you like. I went with a Truth Teller. I got Blinding Nades, All Loading, and Demolitionist. You don't have to run this. I also tried it with Null Composure and it was doing just fine. So you can use whatever you want, honestly. And then for my heavy, I went with a Reed's Regret because it is stasis and I'm using Font of Might. I have triple tap Vorpal Weapon. I'm still hunting for that triple tap firing line roll, but this will do for now. Now, before I get into my stats, I have to flex a little bit here, boys. I have to flex a little bit. So if you look at all my armor, I have a discipline mod on. I have no mod here, no stat mod here. We got a discipline mod here. Got an intellect mod here, and then we have a discipline stat here, a discipline mod here. If you notice, I have no recovery mods on my armor, and I still have 100 recovery. So I just wanted to flex that really quick. So as for my stats, now let's get on with it. I do have 100 recovery, obviously I just said that. And then we also have 100 discipline. Now I don't have anything really working towards getting my grenade back besides grenade kickstart. I have a lot of things working towards getting my melee back. My strength is at 44, so I'm not really too worried about that. And then we have 28 intellect, but again, it's so much faster than the 11 minutes. Like, it's crazy. I think Shadebinder is actually one of the slowest regenning supers now in the game. But with this build, you're going to get it insanely fast, boys. Like, you'll see in the gameplay, it comes back very, very quickly. So you don't have to worry about your intellect too much. Now, moving on to my mods. On my helmet, I am double stacking hands-on. I'm already going to get bonus super energy upon killing frozen targets. Now I'm going to get even more super energy if they're melee kills. My melee freezes, so if I shatter an enemy with my melee attack and they're frozen, or they're going to freeze once I hit them with my melee attack, I get bonus super energy for the melee kill and for killing a frozen enemy. And also, I'm going to have my melee attack very frequent with this build because of my next mod, which is heavy-handed. While Charge of Light, regain half your melee energy when you use a melee ability, consuming 1 stack of Charge of Light. I'm going to be getting Charge of Light very, very frequently with this build because I am using Elemental Shards and Elemental Charge. So because of that, I'm going to use my melee a lot, which is going to give me bonus super energy for killing frozen targets and bonus super energy for getting melee kills. On my gauntlets, I am double stacking grenade kickstart. This is just going to feed into my whole grenade spam with this build. I'm already utilizing 100 discipline, so I figured this is just another way to kind of add to that. Grenade kickstart is a really fantastic mod. I use it all the time. And then my other important mod here is Elemental Shards. Now this makes it so my Stasis shards now count as Stasis elemental wells. This is very important because this is how I'm going to become Charged with Light in this build. Moving on to my chest piece, Mantle of Battle Harmony. Now I absolutely love this exotic. It's one of my favorite exotics in the game. Now what the perk says is you get the perk Absorption Cells. Takedowns with weapons that have a damage type matching your subclass element grant you super energy. While your super energy is full, you instead gain a temporary bonus to weapon damage of the type matching your subclass element. Now I'm mainly using it so I can get more super energy upon getting kills on my weapon. I'm using a Stasis weapon, so it's synergized with the Stasis subclass and Mantle Battle Harmony. But if you don't want to use your super a lot and you just want to get that buff to your weapon damage, I believe it's like 20% weapon damage buff, and you can keep stacking it up. So you get 1 kill, I think it's like 5 or 6 seconds. Just so you get another one, it then goes up. I think it's a max out at 10 seconds, and you can just keep chaining it along. So you can just have a permanent like 20% damage buff for like 10 seconds. It's a really fantastic exotic if you like to synergize your weapons with your elemental subclass. Now the main important mod on my chest piece is Font of Might. Picking up an elemental wall that matches your subclass energy type grants a temporary bonus to weapon damage of that same elemental type, which is why I'm using Cryosthesia and Reed's Regret. They're both Stasis weapons, and Font of Might is a 25% damage buff to Stasis damage, or whatever your elemental subclass is. For me, it is Stasis, so all Stasis weapons are going to do 25% extra damage for 10 seconds. I think I have elemental time dilation on, so for me it's going to be 13 seconds. And on my legs, we're going to double stack Orbs of Restoration. Picking up an Orb of Power grants a small amount of energy to your ability with the least amount of energy. Now, I didn't know what else to put here, so I figured out throwing them on. It only costs 1 mod slot, so it's relatively cheap for a small little bonus. You know, I'm going to be using my abilities a lot, and I'm going to be picking up a lot of Orbs of Power, so I figured I would just throw this on here. And then we're also using Elemental Time Dilation. Elemental well mods that grant you time limited benefits can now stack, increasing the duration of the effect for each copy of the mod you have equipped. So I do have Font of Might on. This somehow kind of counts as a stack of that mod. So since I have 1 Elemental Time Dilation mod on and 1 Font of Might mod on, it now is 13 seconds as opposed to 10 seconds. So I think it kind of counts as one of whatever mod you're using. So if you're using Font of Wisdom, it would count as 1 Font of Wisdom stack. I don't know, it's a little weird, but that's just how it works. And onto my Warlock Bond, we're gonna double stack Outreach mods, reduce melee cooldown whenever you use your class ability. I have 100 recovery, gonna get a lot of rifts, so whenever I do use my melee attack, I should be Charged with Light by then. I get half of it back. Then if I pop my rift, I get a nice little chunk, and then by then, I'm probably gonna collect some Stasis shards. I'm gonna have my melee attack back, which then is gonna also give me another stack of Charged with Light, because I am using Elemental Charge. Become Charged with Light by picking up an Elemental Well. If the Elemental Well's element type matches your subclass element, you gain 2 stacks of Charged with Light. So since my Stasis shards now count as Stasis Elemental Wells, whenever I pick up just 1 Stasis shard, I get 2 stacks of Charged with Light, which is going to allow me to proc heavy-handed very, very frequently, because I'm just going to be freezing so many things with this build that it's almost impossible for me not to become Charged with Light. And if I run into a situation where none of my abilities are off cooldown, Then I just get a kill with my weapon because I'm using Cryosthesia, proc the LN2 burst, freeze an enemy, pick up the stasis shard that generates, and then I become charged of light. So whenever I do use my melee attack next, I get half of it back. Hopefully I freeze an enemy, and I just keep that chain going. Boys, it is absolutely insane. And onto my warlock fashion, I try to follow the design of the ornament from Mantle Battle Harmony. It kind of has this like curvy kind of aesthetic to it, where it looks kind of like almost like fantasy-ish, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's very elegant looking. So I use the New Dawning helmet because it kind of has the almost like the same theme to it, a lot of curves and whatever, and like spiky points, I guess. I don't know how else to explain it. But let me go ahead into my ornaments and my shaders, and you can copy this look if you would like to. So here you go, you can take a screenshot or you can copy it, whatever you would like to do, you're more than welcome to do so. So first, let me start off by talking about the most recent changes that Cryosthesia received. And honestly, I didn't even think it needed a rework in the first place. Now, maybe I was in a small minority of people who liked the gun. I thought it was really good. A lot of people thought it wasn't really good. But now it kind of has a bit of a different flow to it. Before, you didn't really have to stop and change your firing mode. It was more of like you got a kill, then you aimed and shot, and then the only thing is it did empty your whole clip. So if you didn't have your melee ready, or if you didn't freeze them and then melee them, you just have to sit there and reload, which is unfortunate. But now, you just have to get a kill, you proc the firing mode, blast them, and it doesn't take away your whole clip, so you can keep shooting, shatter those enemies, or use your melee, shatter another enemy, refill the magazine. Hopefully by then you have another LN2 burst proc and ready to go, freeze more enemies, and you just keep that chain going. Do I think it's better than this previous state? I do. I think that this state is much better, although I think that the last one had a better flow to it. This is just much more useful, and it has a bigger AoE to freeze. It doesn't use your whole entire magazine, although now you do kind of have to sit there and wait and then actually proc it. I did like the fact that before you just shot, you got a kill, then you held the shoot button and it froze. So that's the one thing I did like, but I think overall the new rework is much better. It's in a much better place now. In my opinion, this is the best stasis weapon to use in the game right now. Now you could argue Agger's Scepter, and yes, Agger's Scepter is fantastic, but the thing about Agger's Scepter is that it freezes upon killing an enemy. So it releases like a freeze AoE upon killing one enemy. So you have to kill an enemy within a group of enemies in order to freeze all of them, as opposed to with Cryosthesia, you can kill an enemy over here fighting in a different engagement, proc that LN2 burst, go to a different spawning group of enemies, freeze them, kill them, shatter them, refill the magazine, then you have another LN2 burst ready to go, then you keep going with that whole flow, and you keep chaining the LN2 burst. And Agger's Scepter uses special ammo when Cryosthesia does not as a primary weapon, and you have infinite ammo, so that also plays a factor. Another weapon you can argue is any weapon with Headstone. Now Headstone is a fantastic perk, one of my favorites in the game, right up there with Dragonfly and Firefly. The thing about Headstone is that you get a headshot kill, procs a stasis crystal, or stasis crystal. Now you can blow that up to do an AoE damage and kill a bunch of enemies, and you can proc things like Whisper of Shards, or you can do Whisper of Change, so you have damage reduction. So a weapon with Headstone is very good, but honestly I'd rather have Cryosthesia because you have a long range freeze that doesn't require a precision kill to activate. So if you're not very good at landing headshots, or if the enemies are tougher like in a GM Nightfall or a Master Nightfall just for example, you're not always going to be able to proc Headstone, but if you get one kill on an enemy, which sidearm slap, they do a lot of damage, you can then save that LN2 burst for the next wave of enemies, and you can just keep that chain going, much similar to my argument versus Agger's Scepter. It's so much more easier to freeze enemies with Cryosthesia now, as opposed to proccing Headstone or using Agger's Scepter to then kill an enemy to then proc a AoE freeze, and which also uses special ammo. So there's a lot of advantages, there's a lot of disadvantages, so it's kind of what you'd like, but honestly I think that Cryosthesia is the better choice here. And in this build, Cryosthesia is like the perfect gun for Shadebinder, because the way Glacial Harvest works is that you just have to freeze an enemy to get these stasis shards, as opposed to with the Hunter, where you gotta slow them and then kill them to get the stasis shard, and then Titan you have to shatter a stasis crystal. For Warlocks, it's just freezing them, and Warlocks are the best class at freezing enemies. So if you can just freeze a bunch of enemies, you can just pretty much always spawn these stasis shards, which not only are going to help you, and in this specific build help you become charged of light and get your melee back for picking those up, it also helps your teammates out. Just for freezing enemies, they can pick up those stasis shards and get their melee back. So it's a really good weapon for Shadebinder, and I hope a lot of people start realizing this and start using it, because I've realized it since it came out, but it seems a lot of people didn't like it. So definitely try it out if you haven't used it since its most recent rework. I think you have a different opinion on it now if you were one of those people that didn't like it before. So definitely give it a shot. Use it with this build specifically, and you will see the power of Cryosthesia. But if you guys like this content, please like, subscribe, and share. It truly helps me out a lot. You can join my Discord, link will be in the description below and the comments, and you can go follow my Twitch, same thing, it'll be in the comments and in the description below. And you can go check out some of my other content. I have a lot of crazy builds and some good thoughts and ideas in there, so definitely go check that out. But with all that being said, guys, deuces.